And the wave of bandit attacks across the north central and northwest continues to expose the persistent gaps in community security, policing, and early response system in several states. This week alone, armed groups struck again in Kebbi, Kwara, and Nasarawa, leaving families in shock and communities scrambling for answers. In Kebbi State, the abduction of children and adults has renewed fears among residents who say they no longer feel safe in their own homes. Similar incidents in Kwara and Nasarawa add to the growing pattern of coordinated attacks that are stretching both local vigilance efforts and state security agencies. Let us begin with the latest field report. And here is News Central Correspondent Jamil Mabai.
Unfortunately, that report isn't coming now, but we will bring that report by Jamil Mabai. But Jamil joins us now. Jamil is joining us to have this conversation alongside very interesting guests that we have for this conversation. Also joining us is going to be Queen Natasha, who is going to be joining us to talk about the instance from the, how it affects the students. And of course, we will be joined by another respondent here today. But first off, let's start with Jamil Mabai, who is in Kebbi State. Jamil, please do tell us exactly what the situation was like. I remember that I actually got to speak with you during the news on, if I'm not mistaken, on Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken, or was that on Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. Do give us an update of what's happening in Kebbi.
Nothing much has changed, nothing much has happened. 26 girls were abducted. 2 managed to escape, and their parents are still waiting in hope that the government will do something in finding the students, their children. But one surprising thing is, the last time we spoke, I told you that the government has intel that the bandits were within Kebbi territory. They have not crossed over to Zamfara, so that gave a bit of hope to parents, knowing that if the bandits are still within the territory, the students can be rescued in no time. But I heard from my own sources, they told me now the bandits have finally crossed over into Zamfara territory, and that is their terrain. They have mastered that terrain, and finding these students now, it's going to be a hell of a task, unless probably the government will have to pay ransom. And I know I'm yet to confirm from official sources, but I have heard that back channels movements now are going on in trying to see how they can secure the release of these students. But one thing about this abduction of Kebbi State is when you dig deeper, when you're on ground, that is when you will understand, there were a lot of complacency from the people started with the responsibility to protect these students. This issue couldn't have happened. Why? Because the governor himself, said that he stationed soldiers in that particular school, and they were given orders that this thing is bound to happen. And they were shown all the blind spots everywhere. Unfortunately, at around 2, these soldiers withdrew from the school. An hour later, less than an hour, these bandits stormed the school, went straight to the house of the chief security officer, asked him whether he was the one. He answered yes. They shot him there and then. From there, they proceeded to the abduction, where they abducted the school children. So this is the unanswered question that many people are not asking the right question. Even the media houses that reported the incidents, like I said earlier, the narrative was the vice principal was killed. This shows, this tradition of lazy journalism when it comes to conflict reporting, which has contributed in escalating this problem of insecurity. But it wasn't the vice principal, it was the chief security officer and one other head of, the security personnel who is in charge of mounting the gate. So there has never no update for now. And we were able to speak with some of the girls that managed to escape the abduction and the one that managed to escape after being abducted. And as usual, you expect their young girls of the SS3 and SS1, their ages 14, 15. So there is this trauma and depression. The mother told us that one of the one that escaped the abduction. When she's sleeping, she woke up in shock and fear. So this is the scenario. And when you look at it from a bigger perspective, it has a wider implication on the enrollment, especially on the girl child education into school, given the fact that Kebbi, compared to other northwestern states, has a bit higher rate of girl enrollment in school. But with this, I doubt if parents will feel safe sending their daughters to school. Just like what happened in Katsina,
Yes, indeed.
Katsina has to close all boarding schools. So similar thing is happening now. A lot of you've seen what the presidency has done, closing of female government-owned secondary schools. So it's going to affect girls' enrollment in school at a time when the Northwest has been battling, enrollment of these girls, going to parents, pleading with them. So now you have them. You take your daughter to school. The next thing, a bandit came, took her away, a 14, 12-year-old, into the forest. You don't know where she eats, how she sleeps, the trauma and everything. So this is a big blow to education, not just in Kebbi, but in the entire Northwest.
Right.
But as at now, nothing, no any update, nothing is happening. It's just parents waiting in hope to finding their daughters.
Okay. Jamil, thank you for that. I will come back to you with a question, but I wanted to welcome into the conversation Kehinde Giwa, who's also an analyst. Kehinde, thank you for joining us this morning. Can you just tell us, how you feel about, the latest insecurity? This week has been packed with so much sadness. Can you just tell us?
Thank you for having me. Good morning. Generally speaking, the mood in the country is really, really down.
Kehinde, we are unable to hear you. We hope that your device is not muted. Kehinde, could you please? Okay, go ahead. I hear it's from our side. We're going to fix that. Let's see. Let's get our producers to actually give us the go-ahead before we can have you answer that question. Our apologies, but we'll fix that.
Yeah.
All right. I'm being told that you have the floor now. Kehinde, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for having me again. So, like I said, the mood in the country is generally sober.
Kehinde, apologies again. We will have to work more on your audio. It still has a problem. We are unable to hear what you're saying. But then again, let's come to Queen Natasha. Queen Natasha is the President, Faith Progress Istifadas. Queen, thank you very much for joining us. Queen, you heard what Mabai, our correspondent there in Kebbi, has just said regarding how this affects the enrollment of girls in school, noting that this is a very big issue when it comes to northern enrollment of children, specifically girls. How is this going to affect enrollment so far, or how has this affected enrollment so far, Queen?
Thank you very much. From the question you're asking, it is going to affect enrollment really bad because for 2 years down the line now and a bit further, the government have been trying, the government of the Northwest Nigeria and even the Northern Nigeria in general have been trying to bring school children, to bring children that are uneducated or out of school back to school, back to the classrooms, giving out free school uniform, tuition fees, books and all other materials. And now it is disheartening to find that schools are no longer safe for our students to learn. This is supposed to be a learning environment. This is supposed to be somewhere that is supposed to be safe for them to progress and for them to look up to their future. But it is no longer safe for them and it is no longer conducive. And a learning environment has to be conducive. So it is no longer conducive, and that alone is a reason for a lot of parents to withdraw their students out of school. As you can see, the federal government is already closing down some of these schools now for the state of these insecurity issues, because it is just going from one state to another, from Kebbi, Kwara, Niger, Nasarawa. We don't know where else is next. So I think I also support the government closing down the schools for now, so as to stabilize the insecurity issues in these schools and in the country as a whole, so we don't have reoccurring of these incidents.
All right, now, Queen Kehinde, this is what we're going to do so we can have a very robust conversation. We're going to try and fix Kehinde's audio so we can have him join us on this conversation. So we do apologize, but let's take a break right now. It's a very timely break, however, because we're going to be switching to South Africa, where we have Cyril Ramaphosa at the G20 summit, and he's giving his speech. Let's take the visuals and let's take the audio. Let's take a listen while we try to fix the audio with our guests on this topic regarding the insecurities in Kebbi State. We'll be back. Back from the G20 there, the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, there with his opening speech. Not quite sure exactly why the cameras had to be switched off, but even if the cameras are switched off there, well, they're on here. That was a pun by Queen. She wanted me to say that. Thank you very much, Queen. I've gone and said it.
You're welcome. Thank you. It was nice when you said it.
But let's come back to the very important conversation we were having from before. In Kebbi State, only just last week, abduction of 25 schoolgirls led us to a News Central report by Jamil Mabai, whom we have had here from this morning. However, we have gone into conversation, and if you're just joining us, we have very interesting people here that are joining us for the conversation. We've got very interesting questions that we have been asking from before. However, let's jump back on that because we had some issues with our connection with Kehinde, and I'm hoping that we have Kehinde, Queen Natasha back with us as well, and also Jamil, whom will be joining us eventually. Okay, Kehinde, let's make sure that we have your audio now. Kehinde, if you can please indicate, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me clearly?
Perfect. So Kehinde, I was asking earlier, what's your take on it? Because this whole week has been a whole lot of, insecurity, and we're hearing different stories around in Kwara, and, what is your take on it, being an expert, in security analysis?
Well, thank you for having me again. The nation is quite sober because we are grappling with a wave of insecurity in the last 1 week. But it is pertinent to mention that Nigeria has been grappling with insecurity since 2009. The emergence of Boko Haram came, into full in 2009. ISWAP came in 2015. Lakurawa came in 2025, and speaking as an analyst, or from the analyst angle, or from an expert angle, I would say that we've been battling with insecurity for 20 years. It is not a new thing. There is no day, just like I always say, we work with data. The data is in the public domain. There is no day that, just to give you a bit of background and a bit of context, there is no day that there is not a killing in this country. There is no day that there is not an abduction in this country. There is no day that there is not a civil unrest in this country. So Nigeria has been grappling with a myriad of insecurity crises from 2009, when the emergence of Boko Haram, came to the country. But now we are having it, in a much more heightened, state, where everyone is now beginning to feel the heat. It's not just speaking as an analyst now or speaking as an expert. Everyone is beginning to feel the heat. Everyone is beginning to feel scared, particularly because of the areas and the location where these incidents are happening, and also, the way and manner with which these incidents are also happening. It is. Jamil was speaking quite earlier, and it was referring to the attackers as bandits. Yes, you would say they are bandits because eventually they would ask for ransom, but the style and the modus operandi of their attack feels like a jihad. It feels like terrorism. It feels like these guys are terrorists. Let's be very, very mindful with the words we use. Lakurawa terrorists, just like I said, came into 2025, and they've been unleashing mayhem in Kebbi. They've been unleashing mayhem in Sokoto. So we are not just dealing with Boko Haram and ISWAP here. We are dealing with the Mahmouda 6. We are dealing with Lakurawa. We are dealing with ISWAP. We saw how they literally slaughtered a Brigadier General in cold blood on TikTok. It's absolutely embarrassing. So from an analyst's perspective, I would say that it is not really a new situation. The data is there. We have over 30 incidents that happen in this country every day across all geopolitical zones. Right. But right now, it has become extremely heightened. Of course, with the claims of genocide, everyone is now beginning to feel the pressure. It is finally coming home, just like those in the Southwest are saying, we don't know where is next.
Kehinde, very interesting data that you've given us there, but something that sticks out is the definition between bandits and terrorists. Could you please give us that specific definition?
Oh, okay. From the expert's angle, one of the main reasons why bandits launch attacks is for gains, for profit. They want to make money. You know, they perform highway robberies, they perform highway attacks, they steal. They can attack a community and they can get into people's homes and they can loot food items, they can loot properties, they can loot money, and it stops there for banditry. But for terrorism, it becomes ideological, it becomes, ethnic, it becomes, like we are seeing now, it becomes religious. So for terrorism, the goal is to enforce their ideology. The goal is to enforce their system on a particular location. And if you have followed the trajectory of attacks in Nigeria, or if you follow the trajectory of assault, especially in the northeast and in the northwest, you will know that terrorists attacks different from bandits. We rarely hear that bandits attack military bases. We rarely hear that bandits attack Nigerian troops. This is what terrorists always do. They always attack the
Kehinde, one more question, Kehinde.
Yeah.
One more question, Kehinde. Based on data that you might have researched on, with the cases that we have had, Nasarawa, Kebbi, and also I think, where am I missing? Kwara. Now let's look at the anatomy of these attacks. Most of them have come, or at least one of them has come with a request for ransom to be paid. So that's totally commercial. That seems like banditry according to the definition that you have given. Can you state, out of these three instances, Nasarawa, Kebbi, and Kwara State, which one actually is terrorism?
Well, like I said, okay, let's start with the Kwara incident. The eventual result of the Kwara incident is that the attackers are demanding ransom. But we have videos that have surfaced online, the anatomy of the attacks, the modus operandi of the attacks. Anyone who is familiar with insecurity knows that was not banditry. And let me quickly state this. If we take a very critical and holistic look at that video of the Kwara incident, at the end of the video, we saw the attackers picking up bags of the victims. We saw the attackers picking up bags and properties of the victims. So this ransom that I eventually demanded for are not necessarily for the attackers. They are for the sponsors of the attackers. The foot soldiers, the so-called bandits or the so-called terrorists, after the attack, have already helped themselves to whatever they can lay hold, at the site of the incident. So this 100 billion, 30 million ransom for the main kingpins or the main bandits or terrorist warlords, as to speak. But that kind of attack that happened in Kwara Church it poses a terrorism style, except we want to say that bandits are now beginning to adapt. They are now beginning to metamorphosize in the way they attack. We know that bandits are not known for attacking churches. All through the years, in recent times, terrorists have been known to attacking churches. They've been known to be attacking schools. They've been known to be attacking Nigerian army bases and military formations. Bandits majorly would attack soft targets to get money, quick abductions to get ransom. But in this case, for example, in the Kwara attack, it is a combination of banditry style and terrorism style. Then to also go into the Niger attack, where 25 students were kidnapped, it is imperative to state that the Nigerian army and the DSS received intelligence that these attacks were going to happen. The Niger state government received the intelligence and all of that. But what do we really do with this intelligence? What do our authorities really do with this intelligence? Just like Jamil was saying, the authorities left the school 30 minutes before the incident happened. And it is shocking that terrorists or bandits or these attackers come into homes, come into schools, come into churches brazenly, pick up their victims, perpetrate their mayhem, perpetrate their nefarious operations, and walk brazenly back into a publicly known forest that the Nigerian army has not been able to obliterate. Now, Jamil was saying, oh, they are in the corridors of Kebbi, they are into Zamfara, and all of that. How is it difficult for the Nigerian army to obliterate terrorists and bandits that are live on social media? How is it difficult for the Nigerian army or for the Nigerian authorities to find these guys when, for example, in Isa local government of Sokoto, Bello Tuji, the most feared warlord in northwest Nigeria, has been imposing taxes on residents? How is it doing this? How is it communicating with the government? How are we establishing all of these peace pacts? We hear of peace pacts in the northwest, we hear of peace pacts in Katsina between the government and bandits or between the government and terrorists. How is all of these things happening? And we cannot suddenly, apprehend these guys. Just yesterday, a video emerged where we saw terrorists and bandits, in a particular wedding, celebrating the wedding of the daughter of one of their terrorists. How is that emerging on social media, and the Nigerian government keeps saying they don't know where these terrorists are? How can terrorists come into a school or bandits come into a school, whisk away students, and Nigerian government says they don't know where they are when they actually received the intelligence that these attacks were going to happen? And lastly, closing of schools, how many schools do we really want to close? Is this a long-lasting solution? These are the questions we should be asking. When the schools reopen, just like St. Mary's School in Niger, report said that they had received prior intelligence, in Niger, that all schools should be closed. Apparently, St. Mary's, reopened their school without a go-ahead from the Niger State government, and the bandits came. So eventually, when these schools reopen, what is the Nigerian government or the Nigerian military going to do permanently to eradicate? I've always said it. Enough of engaging them in a gun battle. Enough of engaging terrorists in, we keep hearing, they chase them into the forest, but they engage them in a gun duel and they were able to rescue. No, we cannot keep doing that. All of their forests, all of their hideouts, where these guys are.
Wow.
Seem to have lost Kehinde there,
Yeah.
but very interesting questions that he asked, and I think those questions need answers, especially the one on how many schools do you want to close down? Thank you very much for giving us those very interesting bits to go on and further this conversation. We still have Queen Natasha with us, but you were going to say Queen Celestine.
Yes, now that he talked about the school, and since we have a student representative,
oh, yes, indeed.
I wanted to ask Queen Natasha that, being a student representative, we see that schools are, they are the ones that often, affected and, asking to be shut down. From your interactions with students, how are they feeling, their well-being and everything? How is it affecting them generally? Natasha?
Thank you very much once again. But it's really disheartening to students, the fact that you can't go to school and can't get education. Like, we unionists and the student unionism will say education is a right and not a privilege. And this is supposed to be a right for you to be learning, for you to go to school, for you to have education. But in a sense where you can't have a conducive education, you can't go to school. Definitely it's disheartening, it is heartbreaking, and it really doesn't sit well in the society that a time will come where schools will have to be closed for students to be home just because there is insecurity issues. And I like what Kehinde said, for how long are the schools going to be closed? And what is the assurance that when the schools reopen, there is going to be a safety, or there is going to be a safety measure for this reoccurrence not to happen again? What are the government and the security agencies doing permanently to curb these situations so as to hinder the reoccurrence of these things? Because, like you rightly said, the schools are the major targets right now. And it is not really a good one for schools to be a target for banditry. It is traumatic. It has been a very traumatic experience from, we reached out to Kebbi State. Some of our student leaders visited the schools and all of that, and visited some of the students that were in the school as at the time of this incident. And a lot of them are having a lot of traumatic experiences. Even at their homes, they are no longer safe because they always feel like, oh, this will happen again. Oh, this will come again. And this is a lifetime trauma for kids, or rather for teenagers at the age of 12, 13, 15, and that to be having such experiences at their tender age. So it's not a good one at all.
Right. Okay, Natasha, thank you for that. But, before I come back to you, I think we're joined back again with our new Central Correspondent, Jamil. Jamil, you reported this incident, and my question now would be, what was the risk having to go all the way there to get all this information across, the whole world, let people see what's currently happening? What was the risk and the insecurity that you faced?
It's terrible and horrific. I've been to a lot of, frontline areas, but I've never been to Kebbi terrain. That was the most scariest journey, I think.
We might have some connection issues there. We're going to wait and see if we can get Jamil back on. Jamil, I hope you can hear us. If Jamil can hear us, we will switch back to Queen Faith here. Now, Queen, regarding these students, you were telling us about, we were talking about the enrollment crisis we have in the north. Can you first of all give us that idea? What is it like for school students getting enrolled in the north? Let's get a general idea before the insecurity issues or instances that are affecting it. Is it easy for students to get enrolled in education, for education?
Okay, it has not been easy for school students to be enrolled because the North has always been known for having a lot of out-of-school children, a lot of parents not being able to fund their children's education, and at an early stage you get to find children on the roads and all of that, begging and all of that. So the government in the Northwest, or rather the northern governors or government, were able to come up with the Back to School initiative, which brought about taking children back to school. With sometimes I'm from Kaduna State, I'm an indigenous of Kaduna State, so I'll use my state as an example. You'll find the government taking children back to school with no tuition fee, making provision of books, of writing materials, of adequate learning materials, just so that these students can be able to be comfortable and be able to get a conducive learning environment. So even the process alone of having to go meet the parents, convince them that, okay, your child needs to go to school, education is important, because some of these parents are not even well learning. That's why they don't see education as something that is compulsory, or rather they didn't used to see education as something that was compulsory or something that they would have wanted their kids to do. Rather, you find them trading, you find them on the streets, begging, and all of that. So they have to do the Back to School initiative, reaching out to parents, enrolling these children, then providing materials for them, school uniforms, books, chairs, tables, boards, and all of that. So if you go to the north before this incident, you find out that our government schools are really filled with students, because the governments have been trying all they could so that these students could go back to school. So you find out that our school fee here in the north is very, very, very affordable, because you find that these government schools are charging like as low as 3,000, 5,000, and maybe it's just for maybe report card, this, that. But every other time, the books, the school uniforms, and all of that are being provided just for the students to be able to have education.
Okay, thank you, Faith. I think we have Jamil back. Jamil, if you can hear me, can you just tell us again, just run through the insecurity and the risk that you went through having to, get this report across, across to us?
Earlier, it was the most terrific and horrifying journey. Why? Because when you look at Kebbi in particular, Kebbi doesn't have a bandit camp, compared to what we have in Zamfara and other, frontline states. But what happened is Kebbi is surrounded by states that are having insecurity problem. So they are put in the middle. So before you access Kebbi, you have to pass through these bandit infested areas. If you're going through Zamfara Anchor territory, which is the most dangerous and shorter, it's the most dangerous but shorter. Or you take through Sokoto, then you go to Kebbi. That also, there is a presence of the emergence of this Lakra movement that are stationed there. So, and because of the timing, we had to took we took the Anchor Road. Immediately after Anchor, that was when the horrific, experience started. We got to a town, I couldn't remember the town. We saw what I used to see in movies, like in Congo or what have you. A man, heads of men beheaded and put on a stake. You understand? So these were the kind of images we went through. As for me, I'm used to going to areas like that. But with my cameraman, this was his first experience, and he was terrified. The people inside were terrified. So the journey is catastrophic. One. Two, when you look at the infrastructure, there is a total disconnection between, government providing infrastructure in terms of good road network to these areas. Let me tell you something. The community where the incidents happened is 31 kilometers to Zulu local government. That is Kebbi, the Emirate. But it took 3 hours or 4 hours to reach that axis because of the total, poor road network. So you can imagine, even if security forces want to render emergency or respond to SOS calls, you understand, they cannot, even if you cannot even drive more than 20 to 30 kilometers. They cannot meet and render assistance. So there is a complete, total, the roads are in total deplorable condition. One. Two, there is complete absence of electricity, both in Zulu local government and the MAGA. Even telecommunication have resorted to using solar power as the means of, providing, charging or powering their devices. So once it's darker, they have adjusted the energy network to make causes a problem. If you are moving and somebody is walking beside you, you can never identify or see that person because the area is somehow, surrounded by rocks, deep forest. So you don't know who is what. So it's easier for bandits to penetrate and move without being detected. And I tell you, no security personnel can dare enter that forest in that darkness because the bandits know the terrain better. They have more more firepower than the army or whatsoever forces that is being deployed in that region. So there is no way nobody risks his life. And the one thing we've been, also is most of the security people there, especially the military, the soldiers, are not from that axis. And Kebbi State has no enforced or trained vigilante system like in Zamfara and Katsina. So there is no any alternative to provide first aid, defensive mechanism. So it's easier for crime to be sustained and be carried out in the way it happened in Kebbi. Why? Because the road network, it's an advantage to the bandits, while it's advantage to security forces and people.
Jamil.
It's easier for bandits.
Oh, Jamil. I hope we still have Jamil there. I wanted to ask something. Jamil, you said something about defense and it being just, you only have just one, no alternative to defense. However, what about deterrence? What about the fact that these soldiers actually had information about the attack from before, but they eventually disappeared? Can you talk us through that? What exactly happened there? How come we saw them at the school from before? We even have notes that they actually took pictures before leaving, and then just soon after there was that attack. Jamil, are you there with us? Oh dear, I'm being told that Jamil has issues with the connection. Queen, which Queen would I ask? Queen, do you have another question for Queen, if you don't mind?
I think I'm good.
Well, I do have one question for you, Queen. Queen, with the situation as it is now, or rather Faith, let me call you Faith from now on so I don't have that mistaken identity. Faith, as the situation is right now, what are we looking at for education, especially in places like Kebbi State? Now, the authorities are asking schools to close down. How bad does this make the situation for education?
Thank you very much once again. It makes the situation bad. Okay, I can see that you've done the correction. So thank you very much for that. It makes the situation very bad, and it makes education very poor in the northern Nigeria, because education is something that is very important. So it is very pertinent to find that education is going to decrease so much in the north, because now when you start finding that these schools are not safe and the school is being closed for secondary school, and then we have only higher institutions being opened, who are those people that are going to proceed from the secondary schools and be the next phase of students in the higher institutions and be the next phase of the future in time to come? There are no people, there is nobody. And so on that note, it makes these parents to feel like, oh, this school is no longer safe for my kids anymore. So on that note, just come back and learn trade. Come back and go to the farm. Come back and go get married. Like earlier this month, I did a campaign against early marriage, to end early marriage, for students to be able, for children rather, or teenagers, to be able to have a sufficient knowledge, education, and have developed their poverty before going into marriage, for them to be able to know their left from their right, how to take care of themselves, and how to take care of any offspring they are going to produce before going into marriage. But now where they don't have the access to education, definitely the next thing they'll resolute to is trading and marriage, and the younger ones going back into the streets. And we don't really hope for that. So we're really urging to the government and the security agents to provide permanent solutions to these things. That's why I said earlier, it's not about closing down the school. It's about providing solutions that when the schools reopen, that this won't happen again, won't have reoccurrence of this incident. So I think the National Female Student Association of Nigeria, like from the press release I did earlier this week, we're urging government to find preferred solutions and permanent solutions for our safety, especially in our schools.
All right, then.
Especially in our various institutions of learning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Faith, for joining and giving us, telling us how students are feeling right now in the midst of all the insecurity. And Jamil, of course, thank you so much for the report. We appreciate it. Thank you.